All right, so for the first part of my global learning project, I met a guy on my floor. His name is Zhuang, but he goes as Sam, and he's from the Guangdong province in China. And for our first interaction, we played basketball. It was pretty cool. I talked about just some historical content in terms of when it was created. Its creator, James Naismith, a Canadian-born science major from who studied at Kansas, and how it was created in the late 19th century, so about 1891. And I just gave him some information in terms of just basketball, and then I asked him about any sports that were big in China and what type of sports he enjoyed. And he actually said basketball. He said his favorite player was Yao Ming, who I realize is a cultural icon over there in China. And I also asked him how a typical day in his life was back home. And he told me that, well, for him, he actually started school, or elementary school, when he was 7, so it's kind of different. But he was learning, he was getting tutored, personal tutoring, all up until that time until he entered elementary school. And then he told me that as elementary school progressed, the work was got more vigorous, and by middle school, the work was very challenging. And they had a typical day like ourselves. They started at about 7, 8 a.m. every single day, but they would no, I'm sorry, they would read from 7 to 8 a.m. and then from that point on, they would go to school, and then they would do school until 5. And then they have a break, and they do physical activity, and then starting at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. Excuse me. And from that, then they would go right back to doing their schoolwork. And this was so that they could make themselves competitive and competing for a spot in one of the high schools, because it was very competitive. It was ultra competitive back home in his hometown of Guangdong province. And I also talked about, I just asked him how the culture was back there, and he talked about some things that we've talked about in class in terms of how people are more interdependent, and how it's kind of different in terms of the independence here, and how people are more separated. And he talked about how everybody's kind of together because it's the most populated area in the world. So there's a lot of people brushing up against each other and everything, which they really don't mind and they don't have a problem about. I also learned that he's in the ethno-relative stages, in which I thought he would be, being an international student, being a sojourner, coming over here for a limited period of time, and then going back, which he said he would do upon graduation. But I learned that he's probably in acceptance, because he accepts the different cultures around MSU's campus, and he knows that everything is different from what he experienced back home, but he accepts it. And yeah, he really enjoys it here. He tells me he's in some clubs and everything, so I can tell that he's accepting it and he's not rejecting it, and he's not in culture shock, because it seems like he's assimilated well. So yeah, he's a good guy. And for my next video, or for our next time hanging out, which will be this weekend on Saturday, we're gonna go um, uh, we're gonna go play volleyball, and he's gonna talk to me some more about volleyball, because he knows more about volleyball than I do. So we're gonna kind of talk about that, and then we're gonna go to the art museum to check out some art and experience the different Black History Month specials that they have at the art museum in Sci-Fi. And we'll also do that after playing volleyball on Saturday. So the culture, the big thing in terms of our culture for that day would be Sci-Fi.